Welcome to the Birth Boot Camp podcast, your trusted guide on your journey through pregnancy, birth, and beyond. I'm Holly, your host, along with Cheryl, Megan, and Liana that make up the Birth Boot Camp headquarters team. Together we are here to explore the amazing world of childbirth and family wellness. Each week we'll dive into empowering conversations with expert guests and share practical insights and heartfelt stories to support you on your unique path to parenthood. Whether you're expecting your first baby, you're a seasoned doula or childbirth educator, or simply curious about the miracle of birth, you're in the right place. Together we'll celebrate the beauty of birth, honor the strength of motherhood, and embrace the joy of new beginnings. So sit back, relax, and join us on the Birth Boot Camp podcast, where every birth is amazing, every family is supported, and every story matters. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Birth Boot Camp podcast. I'm Holly Hopley, the CEO.
I'm Cheryl Ameling, the certification coordinator.
And I'm Liana Wolf, the administrator.
And today's episode I'm excited about because it's a topic that I'm sure the three of us can just talk about for forever. And I don't know that we ever really have before. So we're going to talk about the golden hour and what that is, what that looks like, and how important this time is. So the golden hour, I like to add an S onto the end of that and say the golden hours. I think it should be at least 2. That's my personal opinion, if not more than that even. So the first few hours immediately after baby is born, this is just such a crucial time for not only just the baby, but for the parents, and for bonding and that initial connection that they have. And it can be after any birth for me, like after a vaginal birth, after a C-section, any of that, like it can happen after any type of birth. This is when you are establishing breastfeeding, just meeting and getting to know your baby in those early hours. I really like, Dr. Patel talks about, she's with Naya Care. You can find her on Instagram and stuff and TikTok, but she calls it the platinum hour. And I love that. Like, it really is like so important. So let's chat about it. All the things about the golden hours. What, like, I want to hear kind of like your experiences first before we like jump in. Like, what were your experiences with the golden hour, like when you guys had your babies?
I don't even remember much from the first. I don't really have a gauge of how much time had elapsed or anything. So I honestly couldn't even tell you, but I know my second and third were home births. So we had hours. It was great. Like, we were just midwife and her assistant, they were cleaning up and everything. And we were just basking in the glow of the new baby. And because it was a home birth, introducing our toddler. But yeah, it just, I honestly don't remember much from the first one.
Yeah, I had all home births, and I don't really remember either. I mean, it's been years now. I'm an older mom now. I remember with my last baby, like doing, like skin to skin, breastfeeding, like the newborn exam and all of that was done right there next to me in my bed. Like the baby was never more than, 1 foot away from me the entire time. And I really love how that time, it like at a home birth or birth center, like with midwifery care kind of in general, that time is really, really like sacred, and they know that it is, and they kind of make it really special, make it really important. And helping, like, okay, do you need help breastfeeding? Let's get the baby latched. Let's, we're going to step out so that you guys can just have some time together. I always did the herbal sitz bath, and which I loved, and I would put the baby in there with me, and like all of that was just so special. Like those initial moments of bonding and like really starting to learn my baby from the very first minute, and it being encouraged, I loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like with my first, I just didn't realize how important it was. Like we did it, like he totally did. Like I don't think he left. I think he was there for at least 2 hours. The nurses were bugging me. They were like, "Can we do these things? Can we do these things?" And I was like, "No, no." Like I just kept telling them, "You can wait." Um, and so like I remember doing it, but I just didn't realize the importance of it, until later on that I learned how important that is, like for babies' initial um, for helping them to regulate their breathing and their heart rate and their temperature and all that stuff, and like how important it is for breastfeeding and things like that. So I didn't realize the importance of it. And so like with my later babies, it was definitely like a time that I was like I think it's a time that you protect, like that we do everything possible to make this happen. um and
It's like
so
it's honored. Like this time is
yes,
honored.
yeah, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and like you said, like when you're at home, I had my third at home, it's very much like it's kind of like you don't have to worry about like fighting to get that time, whereas then when I went back to the hospital for my fourth, it was very much of, not that I felt like I had to fight because I was in a great hospital with great midwives, but I still made sure to protect that space and be like, leave me alone, I'm fine, my baby's fine. All the measuring and all that stuff can wait. um, so yeah, I just think it's a time that like we really should prioritize. So yeah.
Yeah.
What, so let's kind of um jump in because we talk a lot about bonding with that. So what do you guys like, what are things that you can think of or that you recommend to clients to like really help there be like make this a really great bonding environment?
Uh,
I think oh, go ahead.
I was to say, keeping those lights low is really great because baby is not going to open their eyes if those lights are too bright. And I mean, we always talk about delaying all of the measurements, the procedures. Like baby's not going to gain enough weight that it's going to change. It's not that important to get right away. So, like you said, protecting that time though and preventing all of that, but having those dim lights, keeping it quiet, having the nurses out, um, it's all like it all contributes to it. And doing the skin to skin, whether it's you or your partner, whatever order you want to do things at. I always, have suggestions for my clients on what I typically see. But I'm always like, but it's up to you. You can do whatever you want. So doing that. And then another thing that Dr. Patel says with her platinum care is don't call anybody. Don't text anybody because I don't know if this is exactly how she phrases it, but it's once you let the world in, you can't get them back out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
it's so true. As soon as you announce, yay, the baby's here, the influx of texts and calls are going to be coming. And even though they're all going to be well wishes and wonderful, you're not focusing on your baby anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You're answering text messages instead.
Mm-hmm. Or you might even have like family, like I've seen family come to the hospital even though they weren't really invited because they sent that message and was like, oh, baby's here. So yeah, I totally agree. I think waiting to tell people is such a good idea.
Well, I think too, setting those boundaries beforehand, like this is how this is going to go. This is how we're going to, the baby's going to be born. This is when we're going to tell you. This is when you get to come see the baby, and we get to decide all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so important because I think,
Yep.
especially with first babies, you get like everybody's so excited and you want to share, and you don't realize, yeah, once you let the world in, they don't get back out. But also we don't really know that we can set these boundaries because everybody, like your mom's like, of course I want to see the baby. So you're like, I guess my mom has to see the baby. And really, she can wait.
Mm-hmm.
And, and nowadays we have FaceTime and we have text messages and we have videos that we, and so like they can get little tidbits of baby when you're ready to let the world in. But nobody actually you're not required for anybody to see your baby until you are ready for them to see your baby. And that can be, I always joke in class, I'm like, that could be an hour, that could be 2 hours, that could be 6 months. You get to decide when you're ready.
Mhm.
And it's, like I think it's important to remind parents that like you're the parent, you get to pick, you get to set all the rules, all the boundaries, but you have to do that. Like it's important to do that, I think, before the birth, like during pregnancy, set the expectation so that you're not having to set these boundaries immediate postpartum.
Right. Like in the midst of it, you're having to
Right,
try to
right,
like handle all of that. Yeah. I like
right. Kick
that.
your mom out of the hospital when she wasn't even
Mhm.
actually invited,
Mhm.
like just go ahead and set those expectations.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Let's, I guess let's chat about like kind of like the different settings, like with how to make it work in all the different settings. So whether that's a home birth, birth center, or a hospital. And all three of us, we've each had home births. And so we've kind of already hit on that a little bit about how like um, it's a lot easier. It's pretty standard with can't talk today, midwifery care. um, and I mean, I would be shocked if I didn't see it with midwifery care. So um, I don't know. Like, is there anything else that you guys can think of that you would do at home?
I think again, just like setting. I think sometimes what can happen is people say like, "Oh, I'm having," Okay, sorry. Let me get a clear thought. Okay, so people think about who they want to come to the birth. They think about postpartum. They think that my mom and my sister want to come immediately, and so they're like, "I'm okay with that." I'm okay with them like being on the premises, but maybe not in the room. So like if I'm at my home, I'm okay with them being in the living room, just not in my room while I'm having the baby, which fine. Except that some people, I think, still know that their mom and sister are out in the living room, and you
Mm-hmm.
still feel that pressure of like, oh, I need to let them know they need to come in. And so like really, I mean, again, like setting an expectation and a boundary and like kind of like reflecting like how will this make me feel in those moments, will I feel pressured, and also since it's your house and they come to your house all the time, they're welcome in your home all the time, it might feel kind of weird to be like, well, no, I don't want you in my house yet. And so like just kind of understanding, like thinking that through when you're thinking about who you're going to allow into that space, even if it's just in your home and not necessarily like in your room with your baby. Um, so I think that that's the only thing I can really think of to add about home birth is just people feel really comfortable in your home, and it's okay if you don't want them there, and like think that through like all the way. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
One thing I thought of with home, like we had our home birth with our third, so we had our two other kids, and so something I think that helps just with that in general is preparing your kids. So like we had lots of conversations, but not even just about the birth of what might happen and what they might experience or see, but like what's going to happen afterwards. Like, what the midwife is going to be doing, what my doula was going to be doing, what the baby might look like, what, like that they might get to hold the baby, just different things like that. So I think if you have other kids at home, preparing them for that, because I think the golden hour can be really bonding for siblings, as well. And so like my oldest cut the cord for my third, and he thought that was the coolest thing. Um, and so I think that can really help with that transition that they experience with a new baby in the family. So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, in talking about older siblings, who's taking care of the older siblings?
Yeah.
If you have
mhm,
family in town, or if you have a sibling doula or a friend, making sure that they know the boundaries, just like you were saying, Cheryl, about just having them in your home. But even if they're caring for your the older siblings, like what do you want them to do? Like, do you want them to come rushing in as soon as the baby's born? Do you want them there at the birth everybody's going to have a different opinion, and making sure that, especially if it's a family member, that they know what you want well in advance. But also to be prepared for you to change your mind, because
Absolutely.
we don't know. I do remember with my second, so my first home birth, one of my best friends came to take care of our oldest. She took him to the park. Like she was great. She was fantastic. And I conveniently had a dinner time baby. And so our oldest was awake, and she's like, I'm going to take him upstairs and get him ready for bed. And I was like, give me just a few more minutes, because I knew I was getting ready to push. And so she was there holding him while my second was born. But then she's like, great, this is amazing. I'm going to take him upstairs to get ready for bed. And she, even though she was not a mom yet, it's like she instinctually knew we needed a little bit, like,
Yeah.
get the toddler up, get the toddler ready for bed. And then she brought him down like a half an hour later. So now I'm on the couch, not like exhausted. You get that rush of oxytocin and endorphins after the baby's born, so you don't feel like horrible. And so then he was able to meet his baby brother, and I think that was really great. And it wasn't something that I communicated with her beforehand, because I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't know what I wanted or how that would look like, and he wasn't quite 2 yet. So I also know, he's not going to be participatory. But it worked out really great, and I loved it. So of course, when we had our third, I was like, hey, friend, I need you to come take care of the boys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. She already knew how things went then.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. What about birth center? What do y'all think for birth centers?
I think birth center is very similar to home, like the midwifery care, the honoring those couple of hours. I think one big difference is the obvious one is that, like, at home, everybody comes to you and leaves you tucked into bed. And at the birth center, we're going to do everything that we need to do, and then you leave. And so, like, setting you up in those first couple of hours for success when you get home, I think is really important. That you feel confident, using that word really loosely for like a new mom keeping a baby alive, but that you feel like, okay, they trust me, I can do this, I have the tools I need, I've bonded, I've breastfed, I've held the baby, I got the baby dressed, so like I think those first couple of hours in that birth center setting is kind of a good setup for, like, okay, now we get home and we can do this on our own, because you've been assisted in it. Hasn't necessarily been done for you, but your time and your baby and your space was honored during that time, so that you can go home confidently. I think. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think just having, like, people who that they trust you, and they like are just like on your team, and you know them very well. Because I think it's a little different than like when you're in the hospital, because a lot of people, like, I like to have the help in the hospital, but I feel like it's a very different type of help. Like, it's really positive in the birth center, whereas like in the hospital it might be more they just have all their rules and policies, and you can and you can't do this, and things like that. So I just think I think confident is a good word for it, because you kind of like, you leave there feeling good, like, yeah, it's, especially for your first, it's still intimidating and stuff like that, but you like at least accomplish the first few hours. So yeah, I think I like that. I think with birth center, I think kind of the same thing applies. Yeah, just the, being thoughtful about who you invite into that space. I mean, that goes with like all three of them, but I think sometimes it's a little bit easier if you want to have people out at the birth center, because they're not, it's not like your home where they just feel like they can walk in and, it's your home, things like that. So, yeah.
I do find, though, that, again, like, I think because sometimes the birth center isn't home, but people still think of the waiting room at the birth center like the hospital,
Oh, okay,
and
that's
it's
true.
not. And so, you know, like, so you still have that idea that like somebody's out in the waiting room waiting for me, like, so, and
Mm-hmm.
not, and that doesn't bother everybody, but I know that it can some women. And so just like, again, being thoughtful about, I mean, because I've been to births at a birth center where like there were people waiting in the waiting room, never even made it close to the room where the mom was laboring. But we ended up kicking them out, like making them leave the birth center because mentally she was having a hard time laboring, knowing that there were people waiting. And so, and then after the baby's born, there's this pressure because they're there to let them in. So, so I think all across the board, you have to like really think about how it will affect you, birth or postpartum. Are you going to feel that pressure, and are you okay with that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's talk about the hospital because I think this is where, we say like you need more. You've got to really speak up for what you want a little bit more at the hospital, and so I think it's really important to be prepared for that and be um, have it on your birth plan, but you're going to have to probably tell them multiple times. You're probably going to have to tell multiple people. And so just having some phrases in your mind, in your partner's mind of like, how can we protect this space? And yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like the hospital is in such a rush to do all the measurements, to, do all that stuff. And I'm like, everything they need to do other than like weigh and like do the length of the baby, like everything else can be done while baby's on your chest. Like as long as like you're doing fine and baby's fine, like everything else, they can check the heart rate, they can check the baby's temperature, they can do all of that stuff while baby is there on your chest. They don't need to go to the warmer. And the studies actually show that babies actually do better if they have that time skin to skin and they get that first feeding in before you go and do all the weight and all that kind of stuff anyways. And it's really just, even though the nurses are bugging you, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? Like, just have them wait. It's okay.
Well, it's kind of funny, like at the hospital, you're there, like there's a whole stay, like you're there at least 24 hours.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
You're
there's
not
like this
leaving.
whole rush, like we got to get this done. Whereas at
Mm-hmm.
the birth center, you stay, at least like where I live, you stay at least 2 hours. And we're like, we have all the time in the world. Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
rush on anything. So it's kind of funny that, like that there's this, and again, it's the policies. It's that we have to check, make sure that everything's good, so I
Mm-hmm.
understand it, but it's funny that the hospital is so rush, rush, rush when you, or can be when you're going to be there for a really long time. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out. I just want to take my time.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I learned when I was a surrogate was it's baby has to stay for 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a normal, uncomplicated birth, mom can leave after like 12 for
Mm-hmm.
real, because they were like kicking me out. They're like, when do you want to leave? And I was like, what do you mean, when do I want to leave? And they're like, you're fine.
That's funny.
Like, the baby has to stay for a full 24. You can leave whenever. And yeah, so that was something I wasn't aware of even as a doula. I wasn't aware that
Yeah.
it was babies are the ones who have to stay. But yeah, so doing all of those procedures, they can all wait. Here in Denver, most of the hospitals that I attend births at, they will actually take the birth plan and they will write like bullet points on the whiteboard. So they'll put like the big major, like yes and no things. It like if they are not a part of the standard, routine, they'll put it down on the whiteboard. And I'm like, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and they still have to come and be like, okay, we need you to sign this because you are declining XYZ or whatever. So you have to sign this waiver. But it's on the whiteboard. So it just feels a lot more, I don't know if welcome is the right word, but it's much more accepting to have these different desires for your child. And the whole golden hour, when I teach classes and I talk to my clients, talking about their birth plan, I'm like, you really don't even need to request that here.
That's
You don't
nice.
have to request that time.
Yeah.
It's automatically done. And it's really great.
Yeah.
We don't have to fight for that. It is rare to see. It is rare to see nurses who are willing to do those procedures on mom, though. Like mom really has to step up and be like, no, and be very, very firm. Because even where they're like, well, can't you do it on me? No, 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 we have to take him to the warmer. Oh, okay. And like, you really have to be, this is what I want, and I want the baby to stay on me.
Wow. I find it just so interesting how different places are, like different locations. Because I feel like here, I don't know, like so many hospitals are wanting to claim that they're baby friendly and they will do what they can and meet those requirements and things like that. But I feel like here they want like a golden half hour. like they always say, yeah, we'll put baby skin to skin. We'll do this, but there is still, okay, let's take the baby and go do the measurements. And I'm like what? I'm very like I've told my clients before, like, what is the rush? Like, do you want them to take your baby or not? And most of the time they're like, no, I don't want them to. And I'm like, then don't. like, and that's when I always go back to those questions. Is mom okay? Is baby okay? Like, is there a reason baby needs to be over there? And most of the time, everything's fine. And so, yeah, I feel like even though they say, oh, yeah, we're baby friendly, we'll do all these things, it's still rushed. At least here it is. So, but I haven't had pushback on doing everything on here. Most of my clients just leave their baby here because I'm like, if they need to check their heart rate, they can do it while baby's there. If they need to check baby's respirations, they can do it while baby's laying on your chest. So I just find it so interesting how different, areas just are, they do things differently.
Yeah.
So
Every once in a while, if it's a slow night, especially at one hospital here, if it's a slow night, baby's born, everybody like disappeared. And it was like no joke, like 2 hours. And the parents were like, what are we supposed to do? And I was like, bask. And they're like, I mean, it's been 2 hours. And I was like, has it really? Oh my gosh. But nobody came in. Like no nurses were popping in. The OB, as soon as she was done, like fixing up mom, she was gone. Like, and I was like, no, there's literally no one around.
Wow.
It was wild. And I don't know if they were short staffed or something, or they were, I don't know. But I was like, this is great, but this is different.
Yeah, when you're so used to,
I don't know. I feel like
people
there's
always
still things
coming
that
in.
you're supposed to be. I feel like there's still things you're supposed to be doing though in those first couple of hours. Somebody's supposed to be monitoring.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like usually every at least 15 to 30 minutes ish, somewhere in there, they're doing something to check on mom or baby or both, or yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Interesting. Well, I'm glad they got that time. That's exciting.
Yeah.
It was great. I was sitting there twiddling my thumbs because I was like, I don't really have anything to do right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
How fun.
Cool. Let's see here. Let's kind of talk about, let's like lay out some things that will happen in those first few hours, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people just don't know going into it. So if they don't take a class and it's their first, a lot of times they are surprised by like all the things that happen those first few hours too. So because there's a lot that happens with you and there's a lot that happens with baby. So I think a lot too, it does depend on, how the birth went and things like that. But typically, do y'all want to do mom or baby first? Which one?
Mom first, because that is always the first thing, is they are making sure that the placenta has been delivered and is intact and there's nothing retained. They're checking to see if mom needs any sutures. And they're checking blood loss and verifying all of that. Meanwhile, mom has baby, and nurses are just checking heart rate, checking oxygen. That's pretty much the immediate standard here for sure. Because they want mom to be nice and distracted while they are checking her out, because it's sensitive. Even if you didn't tear, you just had a baby come out of you. There's a lot going on. So that's kind of the first thing, is they're checking on you. Baby nurse is checking on baby, but they're not taking baby yet, ideally.
Yeah. I think so. Also, like we said, all the things with baby they can do there. So, and then eventually they will do some type of like newborn exam. So typically in the hospital that like to do the full exam, they like to take the baby to the warmer. But again, that can wait. That's one thing I love about like when you were out at the hospital is that happens like right next to you on the bed. And like you are right there. You can see the whole thing. You can hold your baby's hand. You can talk to your baby. I think that makes it a little bit easier on both of you, on both mom and baby. Initiating that first feed or even just having baby near the breast is helpful. But they do usually eat within the first hour. I think that surprises a lot of new parents. It's like babies come out and they will start eating. All of the like baths and things like that though for baby, like that can wait too. I've actually seen more and more hospitals waiting to give the first bath, which I think is good. There's not a huge rush. I remember with my first, I think I had him around like 4 or 5. It wasn't super late. It was in the like early evening, late afternoon. And like I remember by like before the time that I would have been like ready for bed, they were like, okay, let's give him a bath, And I didn't know anything at that point. I didn't know any different. I wish I would have waited. But now I'm seeing some hospitals that they're waiting. And I think that that's really good. So all of that stuff can wait for for baby. Yeah. What else? What can y'all think of? Those are kind of the basics.
Yeah, I think so.
So, yeah. What else? Is there anything else you guys can think of? Like, what other things can we do to just make this like the most magical time? Anything?
I feel like we already talked about it all. Like we talked about, like we kind of brought it all
Yeah.
into the beginning with the dim lighting and making sure that people aren't there.
Mhm.
Oh, take that dumb hat off. Okay, they want to put the hat on because we
Mhm.
lose heat through our head. But there's so many good smells that come from that baby head, and those smells increase your oxytocin.
Yeah.
So feel free to take that hat off and sniff
Well,
your
and if
baby.
yeah, and if your baby is skin to skin with you between your breasts, like that actually will keep baby warm. Your body will actually increase your temperature to keep baby warm, specifically in that location. So, yeah, babies can stay warm without the hats on. I'm glad you thought of that. Yeah. I think just talking to your baby. A lot of people, I think, feel weird talking to their baby because their baby can't talk back. Um, but they recognize your voice. They will recognize your partner's voice. They will look at you like they're like, okay, I know you, I recognize you, but it's because of the sound of your voice, it's because of your smell, all of that stuff. Um so I think I always tell them to, I'm like, talk to your baby, sing to your baby. I've had moms do that, interact with your
Yeah,
baby.
for sure.
Yeah. So
I think it's always so great. Every once in a while, I'll get people who are nervous. It's like they're nervous to talk to their baby. And I'm like, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you're saying. Like, it's just the sound of your voice. And they are always, as soon as they start speaking, and that baby just locks onto them with their eyes. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're looking at me. And I'm like, yeah, they know you. They know you. And that sometimes they seem really surprised that their baby knows them. And it's just always super sweet when they realize that, no, your baby knows you too, not just you knowing your baby because you carried them.
Yeah.
And
You're
yeah,
one.
like I said, I've had a couple moms sing to their baby, and the way that baby just immediately quiets down is just magical.
I love that.
Yeah, I think I always say babies are smarter than we give them credit for, you know. And yeah, it's like they've been listening to your voice. They've been, you know, they know your scent and like the taste of your skin and the amniotic fluid and all that stuff. Like moms and babies are meant to be together after birth, and they're not meant to be separated. So yeah. So enjoy that time, protect that time during your pregnancy, plan for that time, you know, making sure that you and your partner, you know, talk to your care provider and your birth team about what you want that time to look like, and all of that stuff. So yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, this has been fun. I love talking about this. I think it's so important. So all right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. If you have thoughts or questions about the golden hour, please send us a message. We would love to chat. And we will talk to you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Birth Boot Camp podcast. We're so grateful to have you as a part of our community. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it valuable, we'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more families on their journey through pregnancy and birth. As a token of our appreciation, we're excited to offer you our exclusive birth plan blueprint. Inside, you'll find expert guidance and a template to help you create a birth plan that reflects your preferences and desires for your birthing experience. Simply click the link below in the episode description to have your blueprint sent right to your inbox. Remember, your birth plan is a powerful tool for communication and advocacy during labor and delivery. Don't miss this opportunity to take control of your birthing experience and advocate for the birth you envision. Thank you again for listening. Be sure to subscribe, and we look forward to sharing more amazing insights and stories with you in our next episode.